Welcome back to Marvelous DC Girl, your one-stop destination for deep dives into fantasy, superheroes, and all things pop culture. Today we're tackling a hot topic, the lore issues in the Rings of Power. If you're a Tolkien fan like me, you know that Middle-earth's rich history is as detailed as it gets. But Amazon's adaptation has raised eyebrows with some major departures from the source material. Was it creative freedom or a complete disregard for Tolkien's vision? Let's break it all down. Before we jump into specifics, let's talk about why Tolkien's lore matters. Tolkien's Legendarium is more than just a fantasy story. It's a fully realized mythology with its own languages, history, and cosmology. Every event, character, and place is interconnected, which is what makes Middle-earth feel so real. Deviating from that lore doesn't just change the story, it risks unraveling the entire world he created. Let's dive into Galadriel's warrior persona. Galadriel is one of Tolkien's most iconic characters, but her portrayal in the Rings of Power feels like a completely different person. In the show, she's a warrior consumed by vengeance, chasing down Sauron with a single-minded determination. But in Tolkien's works, Galadriel is described as wise, serene, and politically astute. Her power lies in her wisdom and presence, not in wielding a sword. While it's true that Galadriel lived through the wars of the First and Second Ages, Tolkien never portrayed her as a frontline fighter. Instead, she was a leader, a mentor, and a beacon of hope for her people. This warrior persona feels like a modern reinterpretation that sacrifices much of her depth and complexity. Let's talk about Mithril, the rare and valuable metal that's central to Middle-earth's lore. In the Rings of Power, the show claims that Mithril was created during a battle between an elf and a Balrog, infused with the light of a Silmaril. But here's the thing, that's not in Tolkien's writings, at all. In Tolkien's world, Mithril is a natural element found deep within the minds of Khazad-dûm. It has nothing to do with Silmarils, which have their own well-documented fates in the Silmarillion. By tying Mithril to the Silmarils, the show invents a connection that feels unnecessary and contradicts established lore. Let's talk about the timeline compression. One of the biggest challenges for the Rings of Power was adapting a timeline that spans thousands of years. Instead of staying true to Tolkien's chronology, the show compresses centuries of events into what feels like a few decades, or less. This creates several issues. For one, characters like Elrond, Galadriel, and Sauron, who lived for millennia, experience rushed arcs that lose the weight and significance they would have had in Tolkien's timeline. For example, the forging of the Rings of Power is a slow, deliberate process in the books, but in the show it's hastily squeezed into a single season. By rushing these events, the show sacrifices the grandeur and depth of Middle-earth's history. Tolkien's world thrives on the slow unfolding of time, and condensing it diminishes the epic scale of the story. Let's dive into the presentation of Sauron. Sauron is one of the most intriguing villains in literature, a master manipulator and deceiver, but in the Rings of Power, his arc feels overly simplified. The reveal that Halbrand is Sauron is presented as a shocking twist, but in Tolkien's work, Sauron's manipulations are far more nuanced. In the books, Sauron appears as Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, and uses his charm and intellect to deceive the elves into forging the Rings of Power. The show skips over this crucial aspect of his character, opting instead for a mysterious, brooding figure whose motivations are never fully explored. This robs the story of one of its most compelling elements, the slow corruption and deception of Middle-earth. Let's talk about Numenor's portrayal. Numenor is one of the most fascinating settings in Tolkien's world, a grand, advanced civilization destined for a tragic fall. While the Rings of Power tries to capture some of its splendor, it also takes significant liberties with its politics and characters. For example, the internal conflicts in Numenor are well documented in Tolkien's writings, but the show condenses them into simplified power struggles. The slow decline of Numenor, driven by Sauron's influence and arrogance of his people, is one of the most poignant parts of the Second Age. By rushing the story, the show misses an opportunity to fully explore the themes of pride, corruption, and mortality. So why do these changes matter? Because Tolkien's works are more than just stories. They're a carefully crafted mythology. Every detail, every timeline, every character choice serves a purpose. By rewriting or condensing these elements, the show risks losing the very essence of what makes Middle-earth so special. At the same time, it's worth acknowledging that adaptations are always a balancing act, but there's a fine line between creative freedom and altering the foundation of the story. Fans of Tolkien's work want an adaptation that respects the source material, not one that prioritizes spectacle over substance. Well, that's my take on the lore issues in the Rings of Power, but I want to hear from you. What did you think about these changes? Were they necessary for TV, or did they stray too far from Tolkien's vision? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more deep dives into the worlds of fantasy, superheroes, and beyond. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.